I'm going to be sharing my top 10 tips for moving abroad or simply just downsizing. If you're finding the whole process overwhelming, which is completely understandable, then keep watching this video as I share some great ways to help you stay organised during this big stressful time. Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. If you are new, my name is Meg and I recently changed my channel name across all my social media accounts in line with a really big change that I'm currently going through. So over the next couple of months, I'm going to be preparing to move to the other side of the world on my own. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to share some tips and hacks if maybe you find yourself in a similar situation. Now, you might not necessarily be moving abroad, maybe you're moving to a different city, or you're interested in downsizing and you're on a budget and you're moving perhaps to a different area within the same country. Whatever your circumstances may be, hopefully this video will be helpful for you. But as I say in all of my videos, this is just about my own personal experience, so everybody's circumstances and personal situation will be different. Just pick and choose which points from this video are helpful to you. Don't worry about the ones that are not relevant. And yeah, hopefully this video will help. So let's jump right into it. Just before we get started, I did want to let you know I will be making a more detailed version of this video in the coming weeks, where I'll talk a bit more in detail about my own personal circumstances, and I'll break down the points within this video in a little bit more detail. But I thought it would be more fair to keep the two videos separate, so that for those of you who aren't interested in more detail, who don't want to know about the larger story, that's absolutely fine. Hopefully this video will be concise and short enough that you can just apply it to your own circumstances. But yes, in the next coming weeks, I will be making a more detailed version where I will break down the different points in this video, relating them to what I'm currently going through. Okay, so straight off the bat, before I even get started with number one, because I think this one is absolutely essential, and that is to make lists. Lists. It's really important that you have at least one or two lists on the go during such a big stressful time. Everybody knows how stressful it is moving, whether it's to another country or just down the road to a different town. It's a very stressful time. There's a lot to organise. You're probably going to discover things that you didn't remember you owned, that you didn't even know that you had in your home. So lists are very important. Now, I'm a typical Virgo. I have lists for everything all over the place, and I am partial to a highlighter or two, and I even like the occasional spreadsheet as well. So you don't have to be as obsessive with me about it. You don't have to colour code everything. You don't have to have dozens of lists. But I definitely recommend you have at least one or two, so that you can at least visualise how much you have to do. I find personally with the highlighters and the colour coding that it helps me to distinguish between what's already done and what I still have to tackle. It also gives a nice sense of achievement of what you've already worked through and what you have left to do. So yes, not even going to put this in the 1 to 10 tips, because this is really essential. Even if you don't have loads of lists on the go, at least one or two is really going to help you in this process. Okay, so my first tip would be to group together the largest, bulkiest, heaviest, most valuable, most expensive belongings together first. Group those all together first because, well, by definition, those are going to be the hardest things to shift first, and they're also more valuable, so you're going to want that money to put towards your pot and towards the whole process in general. Those are not things that you want to be leaving until the last minute. Okay, so tip number 2 is you're going to have to create 3 different categories for absolutely everything that you own. So the first category is going to be the things that you absolutely cannot live without, that you definitely know you're going to be taking with you, whether that's to another country or to a different town down the road. The second category is going to be the things you're definitely going to sell or donate. And then the third category is going to be the things that you are going to be leaving behind. Now, whether that's with friends or family or in paid storage, those are the 3 categories that everything you own are going to have to fit into. Now, like I said at the start of this video, I will be making another video in the coming weeks when I have enough time, where I'll be going into a little bit more detail about each of these points. This one personally for me is a bit different because the third category doesn't apply, so I'm not going to be leaving anything with friends or family. I don't have that luxury, and I'm not in a financial position that makes any sense for me to be paying for storage to leave things here whilst I'm on the other side of the world. So again, for you, these circumstances may be different. It might be a case that you can leave things with friends and family, or it might be a case that you're perhaps renting out a locker whilst you're away or during the moving process. But yes, In at number 2, you're going to be creating 3 different categories: definitely taking, definitely selling or donating, definitely leaving behind. Okay, so tip number 3, once you've already grouped together those larger, bulkier, heavier, more valuable items, you're going to start advertising them. So obviously these are going to be things that you're not desperately going to need between now and leaving, but those are definitely the first things that you should be advertising. Those are the things that are going to give you the most money, like I said at the start, towards your moving pot or your piggy bank that you've put aside for this whole process. They are also going to be the things that are going to be harder to shift. So you've grouped all of those together, you've created your 3 categories, and now you need to start advertising those big, most valuable items. Okay, so tip number 4, and I'm sharing this one out of my own mistakes, and that is don't undervalue the things that you own. So do not undervalue your belongings. I've already made this mistake, and I'm only a month and a half, maybe 2 months into the process. I've advertised and sold certain things that I definitely should have left advertised for longer, and I shouldn't have let them go so cheaply, but we live and learn. So I definitely wanted to include this one in the list so that you don't make the same mistakes. If you have a lot of time on your hands, and again, like I said at the start, this process might be different for everybody. You might have a year on your hands, you might have, like me, about 5 or 6 months. Maybe you only have 1 month to go through this whole process. So depending on how much time you have, you'll obviously be able to leave things advertised for longer, which means that hopefully you'll get more value for money out of them. But yeah, don't undervalue your things too soon in the process. Okay, so in at number 5, and the reason I'm sharing this one in this order rather than the next one, and this video sort of is in order of priority, I think, personally. You don't have to follow any order, of course, just pick and choose whichever ones are helpful. But in a number 5, for me personally, would be to start packing the things that you're definitely going to be taking. So in that first category was the things that you absolutely won't be able to live without, whether that's on the other side of the world or that you don't want to get rid of when you move to a new area within the same country, for example. Now is the time to start packing those things. Now in my case, it's into these suitcases. As you hopefully saw in the thumbnail, I've only got 3 of them. I mean, there's only 2 here at the moment, but yes, everything that I own is going in these suitcases. Everything else is being sold or donated. So in my case, I've started putting things in the suitcases already. In your case, it might be in storage boxes or containers, however you're doing it. But yes, at this stage, I would definitely suggest you start packing your suitcases, and you're definitely taking things with you, which leads me on to point number 6, which I personally would recommend doing after this stage, and that is to start advertising the other valuable, maybe bulkier things that you couldn't advertise initially, but that you're definitely not going to take now that you've started the process of packing your suitcases or your boxes. And the reason I say it in this order is because when you start packing your suitcases or your boxes, you might discover things that actually you think you could probably live without. Maybe you were convinced that you'd have to take them with you, but actually you can see your suitcases or your boxes starting to fill up, and maybe they're going to be moved into the not taking category. So yeah, in at number 6, now after you've started to pack the things that you're definitely taking and you have a better idea of how much space you have, at this point I would suggest that you start selling and advertising the things that were in the not taking pile that maybe weren't in that pile of big, bulky, expensive things right at the start of the process. Okay, so tip number 7, yeah, that's the right number of fingers. At this stage, and again, like I've said throughout my video, this might not apply to you, so feel free to skip this one if it's not relevant to you. But if you have the option to do so, at this point, I would highly recommend you start moving into one room. So I would start condensing down the amount of rooms that are full of stuff, basically. So in my case, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this in my upcoming video, my bedroom is currently empty, apart from the bed that I'm obviously still sleeping in and my suitcases. Other than that, it's completely empty. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be moving my bed into my living room. I know that might sound a little bit strange to sleep in your lounge, but really it's not that big of a deal. The end goal on the other side is what really matters, and you know, it's all part of the process. If you have to sort of do a bit of glamping for a couple of months, or maybe live like a bit of a student and, you know, not live in the way that you usually would, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully the end goal that you have in sight is a lot more important. So yes, at this stage I would definitely recommend starting to condense down your rooms so that it's not so overwhelming. Hopefully at this point in the process you've already started to get rid of your bigger, bulkier items, you've already started to pack your suitcases or your boxes, you have a much clearer idea of what you're taking with you. So if you have the option to do so, I would definitely start reducing the amount of rooms down that you have stuff in. Okay, so in at number 8, yeah, that's right. I would at this point start putting things into boxes and then selling that furniture. So the big, bulky, expensive, larger items that you grouped together and started advertising at the start of the process, which you obviously didn't need at this point because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to sell them. There might have been some pieces of furniture which you were still using. Maybe they had drawers in them and they were still full of stuff. So at this point, hopefully you've started to free up some boxes and free up a little bit of space, so you have a better idea of how much stuff you've got. Hopefully at this point you've got less stuff than you started with. And so now you might be able to empty the drawers or the cupboards or the shelves, whatever it is, of those pieces of furniture that you couldn't advertise too early on, but now you've got some space freed up to be able to empty those drawers, put that stuff in boxes, and also start selling those maybe smaller pieces of furniture that are not essential to you living over the next couple of months. I know it might seem a bit inconvenient, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable to, for example, put your, I don't know, your skincare products in a cardboard box, whatever it may be. It is a little bit inconvenient and things will definitely not be the same as how you're used to living. I get it, I understand that. But like I said in my previous point, I think it was number 7, this is just part of the process, unfortunately, and the end goal is a lot more important. So if you have a couple of spare boxes, just start emptying those drawers and those shelves. You'll thank me later. Okay, so we're at tip number 9 now, and at this point in the process, hopefully you have almost sold everything that you don't need. You've started maybe even donating things, and you're hopefully just now condensing everything down to a couple of boxes. You have a clear idea of what you're taking with you, a clear idea of what you're leaving behind or getting rid of. So at number 9, I would suggest at this point is where you have to start slashing prices and being a bit ruthless. I personally find this one really difficult. I'm a very sensitive soul and I get very attached to things emotionally, mostly things that I shouldn't. And so I'm coming up to this stage now in my process and I'm finding it a little bit difficult, particularly as I mentioned in one of my earlier points about not undervaluing your stuff. I have a tendency to generally undervalue myself in life. So I think that's definitely reflected in the way that I've priced certain things. But yes, at this stage, you're quite close to the end of the process now. I would definitely recommend now is the time to, unfortunately, start slashing prices, and maybe being a bit ruthless with what you can or can't take. You might be at a stage where you've left things advertised for a couple of months or maybe a couple of weeks. Like myself, I'm now going to have to start looking at halving those prices so that I can start shifting things. But yeah, you're quite late now in the process, depending obviously, like I said earlier, how much time you have on your hands. This is the point where you can't really afford to leave things at the price that you would have liked to have sold them for, and now the priority is going to be getting them shifted. Okay, so my final tip number 10 is don't buy anything else. So from the moment you've decided you're moving abroad or you want to downsize or move to a new area, to the moment you actually leave, don't buy anything else during this process. You're probably already discovering things that you didn't even remember that you owned. You've got a huge list of things that you need to get rid of and you need to donate and pack. There's no point adding to that pile when you're already trying to get rid of stuff. And also from a financial point of view as well. So the more money you can save during this process, the better, and the less you can add to your pile and your stress, also the better. So I'm not referring to things like utility bills, transport, groceries, rent, that sort of thing. Obviously, I'm not referring to those things. Anything that is not essential during this process, you can always sort that out once you've got to your new country or your new home, whatever it may be. For me personally, I just bought these suitcases. They're obviously an essential spend because I didn't have any suitcases and, well, all of my belongings are going in my suitcases. But other than maybe 1 or 2 other essential things that I'll need to buy between now over the next couple of months, I'm not buying anything else. So I'm trying to preserve as much money as possible and also, like I say, not add to the pile of things that you're already trying to get rid of, and also not add to the stress. Save your money for when you've got to your new home or your new country. Okay, and just as a bonus tip to round this video off, and that is to breathe. Now I'm also sharing this one as a self-talk sort of tip. I'm not very good at this, so in sharing it with you, I'm also saying it to myself. It's really important throughout this process that you also breathe. Take a breather, have a sit down on your sofa, or in my case on the floor, because I've sold all my furniture already, and just take a breather. Just have a nice cup of tea or your beverage of choice, and maybe just take stock of how far you've come. Maybe have a little wander around in the rooms without actually going through any boxes, and get an idea visually of how far you've come in the process and what you've achieved so far. But yeah, please remember to breathe. And like I said, I'm saying this to myself as well, because I'm not very good at this. It's a stressful time, particularly if, like myself, you're doing it on your own. There's nobody to share the workload with. You can't bounce any ideas off of anybody else. You might not be in those circumstances. Everybody's situation will be different, but it's very stressful. And whilst there are certain deadlines that are not flexible, so you can't really drag your heels, you also do need to remember to breathe and take stock of how far you've already come and, you know, what you have left to tackle. I easily get overwhelmed, so I understand what it feels like, and I sort of just want to plow through and get it all done as quickly as possible, so that come the end of the process, I don't have such a big mountain of stuff to organise. I'd rather sit personally in an empty flat for a couple of months with my basic things like a bed. You know, I've got heating, I've got things to cook my food with, I've got somewhere to sit, you know, I'm warm, and I've got electricity. Really, you don't need anything else, particularly not during this process. So yeah, it's really taught me the value of how it's possible to live with less, even though I was already a minimalist. And so whilst maybe I haven't got as much stuff to get rid of as other people, I still definitely recommend that you take a breath and just have a look at what you've already achieved so far, and then get back into the process. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I do hope that it was concise and short enough. I apologise if maybe it went on for a little bit longer than I would have hoped. If you've watched my videos before, then you'll know that I do have camera anxiety. I get very nervous when I film, and sometimes I do have a tendency to talk too much when I'm nervous. So I'm hoping that the video has stayed concise enough. I won't find out until I come to editing it. But like I said earlier, there will be a follow-up video on this one where I'll go into a little bit more detail and break down each point relating to my personal circumstances. If you're interested in that, click the notification bell so you don't miss out on that, and then head to the comments if there's anything else you'd like to know or anything you'd like to share with the community. I really love reading your comments, and I get back to them as quickly as I can. Of course, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I can't tell you how much it means to me as a small content creator. And also like this video if you did enjoy it. Give the video a thumbs up if it was helpful. I really appreciate you, and I hope to see you soon. Take care and stay safe. Bye.